The envelope looked innocent at first, tucked between a utility bill and a grocery flyer in the Johnsons' mailbox. But when Sarah tore it open, her stomach sank. Inside was a crisp, official-looking notice with the HOA's seal stamped in, bold at the top. It demanded $3,500 for an unauthorized modification of landscaping. Sarah stared out at her flower beds, rows of roses, lilies, and freshly mulched borders, and felt her frustration boil. They had spent years carefully curating their yard, following every guideline to the letter, yet here was another outrageous fine. Over the past months, the HOA had nitpicked every detail: a $75 fine for leaving a recycling bin out for an extra morning, another $200 for a garden statue Karen had claimed didn't fit the aesthetic. But $3,500? That was absurd. Sarah slammed the paper down on the counter. "Not this time," she whispered. "They've gone too far." Karen, the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer, wasted no time making her rounds the following morning. Clipboard in hand, she strutted down the street like she was leading a parade, her eyes sharp and searching for flaws. Spotting Sarah trimming her roses, Karen marched directly toward her, lips pursed in disdain. "Did you receive your fine notice?" she asked smugly, already knowing the answer. Sarah glanced up calmly. "I did, and I won't be paying it." Karen blinked in disbelief, as though no one had ever dared defy her before. "Excuse me?" she barked. Sarah stood, wiping her hands on her gardening gloves. "You heard me. This fine is ridiculous." Karen's face reddened, her grip tightening on the clipboard. Her voice rose, sharp enough to draw glances from passing joggers. "If you ignore this, there will be consequences." But Sarah only smiled faintly and returned to her roses. Karen stormed off, muttering threats under her breath. By midday, Karen had turned Sarah's defiance into a neighborhood spectacle. Standing on the curb, she gestured dramatically toward Sarah's home while retelling the violation to anyone who would listen. "She thinks she's above the HOA rules," Karen announced loudly enough for doors to crack open and blinds to shift. Children on bicycles slowed to listen. Neighbors watering lawns pretended not to stare, and whispers spread like wildfire. Sarah, standing on her porch, folded her arms. "Call whoever you want, Karen," she said firmly. Her calmness only infuriated Karen more. The HOA enforcer's face twisted with indignation, and she jabbed her finger in Sarah's direction. "Fine!" she shouted. "If you won't follow the rules, I'll have the police deal with you." The entire street fell into stunned silence. No one had ever seen Karen go this far. Karen pulled out her phone and dialed 911 as though she were reporting a dangerous crime. Pacing in the middle of the sidewalk, she exaggerated every word. "Yes, officer. I need assistance immediately. A homeowner is refusing to comply with mandatory fines. This is a violation of community law." Her voice carried far enough that half the block heard her. Sarah's husband stepped outside, shaking his head in disbelief. "She really called. The cops over flowers," he muttered. Within minutes, the distant wail of sirens reached the neighborhood. Doors opened wider, and neighbors leaned over fences, eager to witness what promised to be the drama of the week. A police cruiser rolled to a stop in front of the Johnsons' house, its flashing lights casting red and blue reflections on the wet pavement from the previous night's rain. Karen straightened her back, beaming with smug satisfaction. "Finally," she said under her breath, "justice is here." Two officers stepped out of the car, adjusting their belts as they approached. They were expecting a disturbance, maybe even a trespassing complaint, but what greeted them was a well-kept home, a serene woman on her porch, and a red-faced neighbor, waving a clipboard like a sword. Karen rushed to them immediately, her words spilling out in a torrent. "That's her! She refuses to pay a $3,500 fine. She's defying the HOA, and it's destroying the neighborhood's order." The officers exchanged a glance, one raising an eyebrow. Sarah stayed quiet, letting Karen dig herself deeper. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice calm and clear. "Officers, this is a civil matter, not a criminal one. She's wasting your time." The officers hesitated, unsure how to proceed. But just as they turned back toward Karen, something in Sarah's living room caught one officer's eye. Through the wide front window, a glint of gold caught the officer's attention. Hanging proudly above the fireplace was a framed certificate with an official seal. He squinted, then froze. His partner followed his gaze, and both men suddenly stiffened. Whispering under his breath, the first officer said, "Wait a second. Judge? You live here?" His tone carried disbelief and sudden respect. Sarah didn't flinch. She simply tilted her head, acknowledging the question. The shift was immediate. The officers, once casual, now stood straighter, their voices more measured. Karen, oblivious to their change in demeanor, continued ranting. "You need to arrest her! She's ruining this community!" But no one was listening to her anymore. The lead officer cleared his throat, cutting off Karen mid-sentence. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "this isn't a criminal matter. HOA fines don't fall under police jurisdiction." Karen blinked, stunned. But she refused to comply. "You have to do something!" Her shrill voice drew more neighbors to the sidewalk, curious to see how this power struggle would end. Sarah finally stepped forward, her calm presence commanding more authority than Karen's shouting ever could. "Officers," she said, "I'm fully aware of what the HOA can and cannot enforce. I have years of legal experience." The officers nodded slowly, their respect deepening. Karen sputtered, her confidence unraveling as the balance of power shifted before her eyes. The crowd of neighbors grew as Sarah decided it was time to reveal the truth. "For clarity," she said, her voice steady, "I am a sitting judge. I deal with actual law, not fabricated rules. And this," she held up the fine letter, "is nothing more than harassment." A ripple of gasps and whispers spread through the onlookers. Karen's face went pale, her grip on the clipboard faltering. One officer gave a respectful nod. "She's correct. This fine isn't enforceable in the way you've described." The other officer added, "Calling 911 for a civil disagreement is an inappropriate use of emergency services." Karen stammered, unable to form words, while Sarah stood tall, her presence unshaken. The truth had landed, and the entire block felt the weight of it. The officers returned to their cruiser, leaving Karen speechless and humiliated in the middle of the street. The neighbors, who had been silent spectators, now exchanged knowing smiles and quiet chuckles. One even whispered, "She picked the wrong person this time." Karen, red-faced and trembling with anger, gathered her clipboard and retreated to her house, avoiding the eyes of everyone she passed. From that day on, her patrols grew less frequent, her once loud voice softer and less commanding. The HOA board itself seemed to tread more carefully, reconsidering its habit of issuing exaggerated fines. And as for Sarah, she returned to her roses, the morning sun glinting off her garden shears. With each snip of a stem, she smiled. Not because she had won a battle, but because peace, at least for now, had been restored.